Thank you. I want to thank the committee for having this hearing. I take it personally, having been evacuated from my home just a couple of years ago with the Saddle Ridge fire, representing a district that goes right up against the city limits of Los Angeles. Mr. Geisler, in your written testimony, you note that the buildup of hazardous fuels on many of our publicly managed lands are at historic levels. And you further note that past management activities have actually made our public lands even more vulnerable. How can research improve the maintenance issues so as to reduce the likelihood of fires like those we've seen in California?
Thank you, Congressman, for that question. And, as you said, our forests and landscapes are really at a point where their resiliency is questionable in many places. Science and research has really been doing a lot of work relative to how we best turn the corner on these landscapes. There's always ongoing research related to fuels and what is on the ground. There's a lot of work within FIA, the Forest Inventory and Analysis world, where essentially we are learning more and more about what the conditions are, what the state of our forest is, so that we can better address the issue that's there. And I will say the Forest Inventory and Analysis program through the Forest Service is one of those things that is kind of an unsung hero, providing us with a lot of longstanding data and information related to how our forests and landscapes have changed over time. So it's there. It's ongoing below the surface, and it does not get a lot of notice from those of us that are outside of the community. But making sure that we have effective funding for forest inventory and analysis, and then programs like the Joint Fire Sciences Program that helps coordinate the research utilized in some of that data is really some of the critical needs.
Thank you. Firefighters, emergency officials, Dr. Clements, you indicated how they and community leaders can struggle with disaster management. Wildfire season is increasingly becoming year-round. Our firefighters are being asked to work impossible hours in hazardous conditions. Dr. Clements, how can we better use scientific modeling and the enormous amount of data that have been collected to better predict the number of firefighting personnel that we will need?
Thank you for your question, Congressman. So that's a difficult question. So what we could do in the future is using some of these state-of-the-art fire prediction models to look at what we should expect. How big are these fires going to be, given changes in wind, changes in temperature, and fuels? And so that could give us an idea of what resources and suppression needs are going to be required in the future. So that's one way to use some of these new models that are very high resolution to look at what those needs could be in the future.
Thank you. And I also want to take a minute to thank the Appropriations Subcommittee for funding a project, or recommending the funding of a project in my district to replace invasive and highly flammable shrubs with native and fire-resistant shrubs right there in the area of the Cessnon and Saddle Ridge fires that we've suffered through in recent years. I thank you for your comments, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Dr.